is it lets us go deep, and we find that the broad topic, can be unpacked in so many different directions, that there are as many directions as there are thoughts or beliefs or movements or energy. And so this one is a more obvious one in conjunction with Lent, because Lent leads to a time of extreme trial in the life of Jesus. And so it's an easy one to include. But I'm hoping that maybe today we come to something new around the notion of blessing in trial. I think it's an incredible start point to name the trials in our life, and in naming them, to recognize what they are and what they aren't. And that's a good start point for the blessing of the trial to come forward to us. It also can be a mechanism for bypassing the trial. I have worked with many, many people, and I think even in some ways, every person in humanity, including myself, can do a little bit of sidestepping a trial by claiming it's a blessing, but not truly feeling it's a blessing. So when we have trial, we have an opportunity to stand in relation to it over and over and over again until the blessing of it is revealed. To hold fast the belief that there is blessing, that gives us the opportunity to surrender with trust. But to also stay with it until it is no longer a trial, to stay with it. So I'm going to read this passage that I put in the email, because this is a fundamental trial, right? It's an anchor for the Judaic Hebrew tradition. It's an anchor within the Christian tradition. It's a story that is held and esteemed, and it's a story that lets us celebrate Abraham in what? In his faith. In his faith. So if you would, close your eyes and let these words just fall upon you. Just be open to them as saying something new and different to you. Don't look for it. Just see if something can germinate within you as something new. God called to Abraham. Abraham. Ready, Abraham replied. God said, take your son Isaac, your only one whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. There you shall offer him up in holocaust on a height that I will point out to you. Early the next morning, Abraham saddled his donkey, took with him his son Isaac and his 2 servants as well, and with the wood that he had cut for the holocaust, set out for the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham got sight of the place from afar. Then he said to his servants, both of you stay here with the donkey, while the boy and I go on yonder. We will worship and then come back to you. Thereupon Abraham took the wood for the holocaust and laid it on his son Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 walked on together, Isaac spoke to his father, Abraham. Father, he said. Yes, son, he replied. Isaac continued, here are the fire and the wood, but where is the sheep for the holocaust? Son, Abraham answered, God himself will provide the sheep for the holocaust. Then the 2 continued going forward. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. Next, he tied up his son Isaac and put him on top of the wood on the altar. Then he reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the Lord's messenger called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Yes, Lord," he answered. "Do not lay your hand on the boy. Do not do the least thing to him. I know now how devoted you are to God, since you did not withhold from me your own beloved son." As Abraham looked about, he spied a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. So he went up and took the ram and offered it up as a holocaust in place of his son. Again, the Lord's messenger called to Abraham from heaven, and he said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have acted as you did in not withholding from me your beloved son, I will bless you abundantly and make your descendants as countless as the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore. Your descendants shall take possession of the gates of your enemies, and in your descendants all the nations of the earth shall find my blessing, all because you obeyed my command." So I'm just going to point out a couple pieces of this passage. In the beginning, when the call comes for Abraham to take Isaac to the Holocaust, the phrasing is that God speaks to him. Then in the midst of the Holocaust, it's God, but it's also phrased in the text as God's messenger. And then even the messenger refers to himself as the Lord. So you have numerous experiences of the divine happening here, some clear, right, in the first person God, some as a messenger of God, so not so clear, right? At a moment that a message is coming through a channel and yet is God. And you have Abraham traveling with something that was very beloved, right? Because they had been barren in the story, myth or not. And so this was a sign of fertility. It was a sign of abundance. It was a sign of God's favor to have a son, even in the nomadic place of that culture back then. And you have this individual in a moment of trial, willing to give up that would have been so confusing. All trials are difficult. They wouldn't be called trials if they weren't. But many trials, it's clear they're a trial. It's a stand against. It's a betrayal or an oppression or a moment of doubt. It is a happenstance that's easily named. But here is a completely confusing event. An event where an individual is being asked to give up something that was gifted to him because they were barren. So it's gifted to him, something that is a sign of their own abundance. An individual that was blood of his blood, precious to him, and an individual that would have carried on. And Abraham had already had enough experience of God to have a sense of being chosen, a sense of being called, a sense of being in God's presence on this earth for a purpose. And here in belief terms, this would have been something that he was being asked to give up, that he would die just himself with no seed carrying on whatever his purpose was. So you have all of these elements happening in this text. And when you look at the meaning of the word trial, oftentimes you get, I looked up some of the etymology, and, it has the obvious that a trial is something that is testing your faith or your patience or your stamina. But another look at the word trial is that it's a measure of your qualities, of your performance. A trial is something that lets you realize a part of yourself that is really coming into all your life, but is a light is shining on it right now. In a trial that you're in right now, because we all have them going on at all times, what God quality is coming forward in you right now? And what are you being divested of that seems to be wrong? Seems to be wrong. I remember when I was banned by the bishop in the Catholic Church. So at that time, I was straddling 80% doing Catholic missions and retreats and all of that, and it was very, very successful. It was the power of Christ happening there was incredibly powerful, and 20% was non-denominational because my spirituality has been so universal and mystical anyway. And naturally, things were opening up around me in that. And I remember when I was straddling that time, I ended up getting banned by a new bishop that had come in. And I won't go into the whole story because it's not really about the story. But what was most devastating about that was it was confusing because I was showing up with innocence in all my gifts. And the gifts were reaping fruit in a Christian sense. They were reaping fruit. People were coming closer to Christ. People were experiencing dramatic healings. And I was personally rejected. I was seen as a heretic, as unorthodox, as someone who the bishop said he needed to protect the flock from. But there were other layers too, because this very lineage was a place that I experienced God. It was the religion of my childhood, of my formation. It was the religion that was the entry point and the gateway to overwhelmingly powerful, liberating experiences. It was a place that I found a home in this world where it's difficult to find a home. So you have all of these elements happening in that trial that are completely confusing, that there's not a logical reason. You can't argue with it. You can't say, but look, everything I'm doing is in alignment with all of the teachings, like nothing I'm doing. You can't really argue with it because the reason the trial's happening has nothing to do with really being unorthodox. So what's a trial in your life? A trial that you're still realizing the blessing within it. And how can you interface with it now in a different way? Not where you're trying to work it out, not where you're trying to make sense of it, not where you're trying to be understood, not where you're trying to accomplish something with it, like bringing the other element or party or individual to a new understanding because you see it clearly. How can it be just about you and God? And how can you surrender in that trial in some way? Look at what Abraham did. What did he say? Right when he was called, he said, ready, period, period. And when the call came, if it happened historically, at least we know it represents this. There were layers going on underneath. but he did not, he did not waver in what he did, period. And he recognized that the Holocaust that was going to happen was God's, right? Not his own. That this was God's and God's alone. So that was his response to Isaac, right? God will provide the Holocaust. God's providing the Holocaust here. Whatever the trial may be that you're going through. If you will choose to step back from the ways you interface with it that increase your suffering. So this morning's meditation, I know the reflection went a little longer than normal, but there's so much to unpack there. Got my mala. We're going to use a mantra that's a very powerful one in the Hindu tradition, some of the Hindu traditions. And it has to do with the deity Ganesh. So one of the deities of the Godhead is Ganesh, and Ganesh is an elephant that is the remover of all obstacles. So this one is all about letting yourself remove the obstacles between you and the way you view your trials, the way you interface with them, that is stepping short of the real import of the trial. When you do that, you will have peace and clarity, and you'll know what to do, how to walk forward in your trial. For me, when I was banned, the walking forward was, I can do no other than be faithful to the spirit within me and the truth that is evolving. And I had a time after that trial, it was probably just a month or so, that I went to Mass with my sister, and she goes to the cathedral for Easter. We all went as a family. And who gives me Eucharist but the very bishop that banned me? And I had the grace and the freedom to thank him and to bless him. He didn't recognize me, but I recognized him because he was a messenger. So this mantra, let me see if I can put it in the, oh, I don't have the webinar part set up, do I? I just have the regular way. Hold on a second. All right. So it's five five words, if you will. The words really run together, but they're separated out here. Om. The second is Gum. Gum is the seed syllable for Ganesh. G-U-M. Gum. The third, and if you have a pen or if you took notes, write this down. Vigna. V-I-G-H-N-A. Vigna is the third word. Nashanaya is the fourth. Nashanaya. Namaha, which is to bow to. So Vigna and Nashanaya is to tower above. Vigna is the obstacles. So Ganesh we're opening up to clear the way that we may tower above all obstacles, and we bow before the mantra. So Om, Gum, Vigna, Nashanaya, Namaha. And you'll sink into it. I'll be doing it slowly enough. If not, if it's difficult, if it's like a tongue twister for you, let yourself simply open to it. I invite you to close your eyes and clearly name a trial you have in your life right now. And recognize the ways you relate to that trial that increase your stress. And now we're going to surrender that relationship of you to your trial. Om Gum Vignanashanaya Namaha. 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 Om Gom 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 Vignanashanaya Namaha. May you walk this day in that blessing that can be found in every trial. I invite you to draw your palms together and open your eyes with Namaste. Namaste, my friends. Have a great day.